Hello everybody, my name is Steven and welcome back to the Storytime channel. Without wasting any time, let's get into our stories of the day. Work to rule. Background: some years back I went to work for the UK government. Because the department operated flexi time and I lived on the south coast at the time, and I had to commute into London, I agreed at my induction that I could start work at 7:30 AM and finish at 3:30 PM. This allowed me to get home and avoid the worst of the commuter traffic. Now, I actually used to get in not long after 7 AM and leave closer to 4 PM. Or if I missed that train, 4:30 PM, due to working near the station and having to get whatever trains were scheduled. Being that I was only being paid for 35 hours a week, I was actually doing well over 40 hours a week of work if you factored in that I rarely took my hour-long lunch break either. After a couple of years and 2 manager changes, my then current manager said to me in my performance review that there was a perception that I left early each day. I told him that my agreed upon hours were 7:30 AM to 3:30 PM each day, but he wasn't interested in hearing that and just wanted me to work the standard 9 to 5. Remember, we had flexi time, meaning anyone could start between 7:30 AM and 10 AM and leave between 3:30 PM and 8 PM. So I started working 9 to 5. I used to get in about 8:15 each morning and read a newspaper until 9 AM on the dot. At 5 PM on the dot, I would turn off my computer and leave. Each lunch break I would take exactly 1 hour. On more than one occasion he asked me why I wasn't working, and I reminded him that he asked me to work 9 to 5, which is what I was doing. Often between 8:15 and 9 AM he would ask me to just do this thing quick, and I would reply that I was happy to do that at 9 AM. After a few weeks of this, he tried to have me disciplined. Fortunately, I pulled out the copy of my performance review that both of us had signed where he told me that he wanted me to work between 9 AM and 5 PM each day, and the disciplinary was immediately dismissed. Sadly, this didn't have a happy ending. He was promoted sideways away from a managerial responsibility after calling a colleague a racial slur, and I had to stick to 9 to 5 until I left a couple of years later. For those 2 years, I became another sweaty commuter armpit on the massively overcrowded trains, and I hated it. Obviously, having a great job is worth it, but sometimes it's worth considering the commute in relation to whether or not you actually want a job. Obviously, in OP's case, I'm sure it was a situation where he wanted it, but having a very short commute can be pretty nice. But these shelving units aren't anywhere near strong enough. So for a little bit of background information, I was attending an animal care course in college, and as part of the course, I was required to complete a work experience. My manager, who shall only be referred to as manager, was notoriously difficult to work with and seemed to enjoy making people's lives difficult. I had been working there for several months on weekend basis and only had minor problems with the manager so far, such as her asking me to eat my lunch on the counter in full view of customers, which made me very uncomfortable, and a few customers even asked manager why I was doing this. But one day I was given the task of unloading an unusually large delivery after the store had been cleared out by an animal event in town needing a lot of supplies. I told manager that the shelves couldn't hold anywhere near the amount she had ordered, but she requested I do it anyway. I pulled up the safety sheet which clearly outlined the maximum weight per shelf, but she insisted. I had just finished loading up all the shelves and saw them visibly bending under the weight, so I informed manager only to get told that was normal and went back downstairs to attend to my other duties. 5 minutes go by and a crash rings throughout the entire store. We all head upstairs and find virtually every shelf demolished and thousands of pounds of equipment in tatters. Manager immediately blames me in full view of the entire shop, despite the fact that all the staff clearly knew she was at fault for this. Regardless, I was fired and the letter of termination was mailed to my tutor, which led to a meeting with manager, me, my tutor, and the principal of the college. Upon hearing my side of the story, my tutor accompanied me to the store so she could investigate, and she had found that the shelves were built improperly and had also been jury-rigged together after breaking previously. After this was found, Manager's store was blacklisted from the approved work experience providers list for the entire district, and she was facing severe charges for blatant health and safety violations. A few months go by and a lack of customers and employees led to her having to sell the shop. So you're in this incredibly tough situation where you need this work experience and this manager is telling you to overload these shelves far beyond their capacity. What do you do or what do you say? Let me know in the comments below. Sir, I just do what I'm told. Flat broke and with limited work experience, I moved to my new college town and land a job doing security. It was a super small company ran by an extremely stern former cop. He was extremely formal and very conservative. I was basically walking sunshine at the time, so our personalities didn't exactly mesh. Despite his obvious disdain, he hired me anyways. Within a day, I was sent immediately to a medium-sized beverage factory. I hit the floor running. I knew a couple of the workers from my hometown and had just met a couple of the guys at a recent party, so things started off great. Couple of weeks in, there's a break-in by some kids in the back. No big deal, everything worked out. The beverage company general manager came out and personally thanked me. Over the next few weeks, the general manager has me do a couple of things for him here and there. Nothing special, just little odds and ends. Malicious compliance time. General manager comes to me outside and tells me, "Hey, I need you to tell your boss at the security guard company a few things. We need the night guard to stay an hour later for the week, and we need you guys to stop wearing the silly hats that go with your uniform. This isn't the army." I laugh and tell general manager, "You've met him, right? He won't want to hear any of this from me. He is gonna call you." The general manager shakes his head and says, "I don't want to talk to him, I want to talk to you." I relay the message to my boss and he's furious. He tells me in no uncertain terms, are they to tell me anything about anything? He tells me, "Whatever they tell you, don't tell me. I don't want to hear it. You have the general manager tell me. It's the basic chain of command." So, of course, the next day I see the general manager and he now tells me about 4 other things that he needed me to do. I explained to him what the boss said to me about relaying any information. General manager smiles and tells me, "Well, tell him that we probably will go with another company if he doesn't call me in 10 minutes exactly." I call the boss as instructed and he is furious already when he answers the phone. "I told you, don't tell me anything. They call me. I don't run my company by you." I didn't tell the boss, as instructed, that he had to call the general manager within 10 minutes. The boss calls the general manager much later in the day and loses it. Tempers flared and 2 weeks later, I'm working at the factory, but under a new security company, as the boss sold it before he lost his biggest client. If you're stubborn and you're not wanting to work with the people who hire you and put money in your pocket, it's gonna probably go away pretty quickly, at least I would think. Boss trashed me for 5 minutes late, so I complied to their wishes. I worked at a great company, not hourly paid. Official hours are 9 hours 30 minutes, 12 hours to 14 hours, but just 1 hour of lunch break. You have to manage it between those times. 18 hours. I love my work and often arrive before 9 and leave after 1845. So almost 2 hours more of work every day. So 10 hours a week, free, but gladly done. I really enjoy what I'm doing. One day, for my lunch break, I went to have sushi, but the cashier made a small mistake with the bill and we had to stay a few minutes more to regulate it. So I came back to work at 14:05, left at 1300, so 5 minutes more than the usual lunch break. A girl who works there, not my boss or any kind of supervisor, trashed me for being late, not respectful, yada yada yada. I was really ticked. I am no child. We are not at school or anything. And my job was always done and with my client's satisfaction. So the next day and the following week, I arrived at 9:30 precisely and left at 1800 on the clock. My real boss was quite annoyed because, well, I worked way less than before, and I explained the situation. I don't know what happened to her, but she never trashed anyone after that. Doesn't anyone have something better to do in their lives rather than complain to somebody about being 5 minutes late to anything? What's it worth to anyone? Doesn't do anybody good. Dad really liked oysters. My dad told me this story about when he was in Vietnam. It's been a few years since he told me, so some of the details are a bit fuzzy. So my dad was a paratrooper during the Vietnam War. One day he gets some much needed R&R and he decides to check out a restaurant. Can't remember the city. As he's looking at the menu, he sees they have raw oysters as an appetizer. My opinion, oysters are gross, but growing up outside of New Orleans, Dad was beside himself. When the waiter comes to see him, this happens. "Hey man, can I get a dozen raw oysters for an appetizer?" Waiter in broken English, "I'm so sorry sir, but you cannot eat a dozen raw oysters." Now Dad was a cool dude, but he could lose his patience when he had to repeat himself. "Listen pal, I'm from Louisiana. Just bring me a dozen raw oysters." Waiter says, "But sir, bring me a dozen raw oysters." Waiter sighs. "Okay." A few minutes later, the waiter comes out pushing a double-decker cart with 12 oysters the size of frisbees. If y'all don't know, most oysters fit in the palm of your hand. So these were like 3 times the size of normal oysters. Waiter gives my dad a smirk like, "Here you go." Dad, being the absolute madman that he was, then proceeds to, painfully, eat all 12 raw oysters. Couldn't let the waiter win after all. Waiter comes out of the back and sees Dad actually finish them and is now stuffed to the gills. He looks at Dad and says with a big serviceman smile, "Would you like to order now, sir?" They both had a laugh. They warned him. If somebody's gonna warn me about something, I probably would heed the advice. "Well, you can't confiscate my hands, so..." Basically, I have trouble concentrating in class if I have nothing to do with my hands. I constantly fidget and I often stay focused if I just leave my hands to do something. Usually draw or fidget with my fidget cube. I always have paper in my pocket. Usually it's an A4 piece of paper folded into quarters. So I have different spaces to doodle different things while I focus on what the teacher is doing. This causes them to think I'm not working, which I am. There's been many times where I haven't had anything to do and I've started to pick at my nails and fingers, causing blood to drip everywhere when I scratch too deep. So obviously I had the solution to stop having to run and get tissues or plasters and also be able to concentrate. A few months ago, I had some paper on my desk and while I was trying to learn some quite hard maths, I hate maths, I'm so bad at it, the teacher tells me, "OP, listen to my class, stop and put that piece of paper away." So I groaned and did just that. She said to put that piece of paper away. So I brought out another piece of paper from my second pocket, to which she confiscated it. By the time she did that, it was only a small doodle of a fox, I wasn't bothered. So I grabbed my sketch pad. She never said anything about not having sketch pads out. It was only small and once I started again, she told me to stop, despite the fact that she could clearly see I was listening to her. She confiscated all paper I had, putting it away until the end of class. On this day, I hadn't got my fidget cube. I can't remember why. I think I was just in a rush to get out the door and left it on the table because my blazer was being washed. So my paper was now gone because she didn't want me drawing on paper. But what else can be drawn on? My hand. I got out a pen and started doodling in my hand. I'm still concentrating, but it's not like I understood the math anyway. And the teacher just glared at me. "Stop and listen." "I am listening, teacher." "If I catch you drawing and not paying attention again, I'm gonna..." I know I'm an idiot for cutting her off, but this teacher was always annoying me for the smallest things. "Oh, you gonna do what? Confiscate my hand? Good luck with that." She went silent as the other students looked at her and then me. She didn't bother me for the rest of the lesson, and by the time class had finished, both of my hands were covered in pen. Like I said, she can't confiscate my hands. I need them to be able to do her class. This is definitely the kind of situation where it needs to be brought to the surface. I don't know if this is a current event happening for OP, but if it is, it would be good to have that discussion with teachers, with some kind of management at the school, and probably having their parent discuss that too if it's applicable, because having that thing known can only really help you. But with that being said, that's all the stories we have for today. So what I want to know is, which of these stories was your personal favorite and why? Let us know in the comments below. And thank you all so much for watching and listening to the Storytime channel. If you haven't yet, please consider subscribing. And don't forget to turn notifications on so you'll never miss an upcoming video. Thank you all again for watching and listening to the Storytime channel.